Okay, so I go on YouTube and I make these polls periodically just for kicks and just to see what you guys think about stuff. And I say guys, meaning men, because 97% of you are men, and the other 3% clicked on the video by accident. So I put up a poll a few days ago and it says, would you hire a field technician that has no driver's license? There were 189 votes. 84% of you said no, and 16% of you said yes. Well, I think there was one guy in there, and there's 23 comments on this poll, which is abnormal for one of my polls. But there was one guy in there that was talking about disabled people. It says, what about someone that is disabled and can't drive but needs someone to drive them so you work in a team? Are you really going to discriminate against disabled people? Which is, to me, an odd thing to say. Because that makes the assumption that I made the poll thinking about handicapped people trying to get a job in HVAC. Which makes me think handicap as in can't drive as in somebody who has a physical disability. And I can't imagine them being very successful in the HVAC world. Maybe in the office or something, but I mean, just thinking logically, I think nowadays we kind of get into this thing that anybody can do anything all the time and there's no limitations or boundaries. But there are, in the real world, limitations and boundaries, unfortunately. And that is unfortunate. But I mean, if someone's in a wheelchair, they're probably not going to be very good at attic jobs. And the same guy may not be fired up about going into the crawl space and using his arms to drag himself around the crawl space to do HVAC work. And that's no problem with me because that guy can probably find better things to do, or gal, or non-binary person. They can probably find a different job. So I really wasn't talking about disabled people. And I think sometimes these people comment stuff just to kind of get things going, which is fine. I do the same thing. But wasn't talking about disabled people. I was thinking more about the DWI people, the people who had lost their license. And I'm also, no one brought it up, I'm not talking about toddlers either. So if it's a person who can't get a driver's license, I wasn't talking about toddlers. So I just want you guys to know, in case you were wondering if I was discriminating against 4-year-olds, that is not the case. You know what? So these are kind of interesting comments. There were threads on here that kind of went back and forth. I'm going to do Sam a favor. Sam listens to this. So I'm going to read his comment and go down his thread. Just for kicks. This is just for kicks, everybody. I'm talking about DWI people. And I probably wouldn't hire them. I had an experience like that with a person who couldn't drive or didn't have a car. I forget what the deal was. But it was not working out quickly. That was a week-long affair, and then that ended. So old Sam here says, on second thought, maybe. Everything depends. If that were really good and agreed to take a $12 an hour discount, and you could hire a full-time driver, helper, or apprentice with the money. Well, that's probably not going to happen. That's like a chauffeur. If I'm hiring a chauffeur, they're going to drive me around. I'm going to be in the back of a Lincoln Town Car Stretch, and they're going to be driving me around. So that's you know what I'm saying? That's just how it's going to be. That was the wrong thread. Sorry, Sam. I'm talking about this thread underneath here. Larry Blake says, they are most likely a bad seed. Let them work their way back to credibility. Well, that's a tough one because you don't want to say they're a bad seed, or maybe, if they got a bunch of DWIs, then I guess it's perfectly reasonable to say they're a bad seed. But you want people to get redeemed and work their way back. But that does take time. And typically business owners aren't the type to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to let you work out your redemption through me taking a risk on you as an employee. That's not what business is about. Business is about making a living so you can take care of your family. And making a living and take care of your family typically doesn't involve taking unnecessary risks with your family's welfare. Now, there are some people out there that will go that extra mile to try to help people, and I don't see anything wrong with that. But I also don't see anything wrong with the majority of people who say, I need to take care of my family. I can't take these risks. It's not my fault that you did something wrong. But then again, we got to help each other, but not every single way is open to helping. I wouldn't do it personally. That's just me, because I wouldn't take that risk. But Larry said, maybe a bad seat. I just want to see how this unfolds. The disabled guy, like the one discrimination guy, popped in there. He said the same thing about discrimination. And Sam says the question is, why don't they have a driver's license? Again, I wasn't assuming they were disabled like in a wheelchair. To me, that is just nonsensical that you would hire someone who couldn't walk to do HVAC work in the field. Because I did say field work, I believe, in the comment. Yeah, and see, Larry comes back and says if they're disabled, I don't know how they could do this trade, not service or install. I don't know either. It doesn't make any sense. And, we go down here, it says, oh, come on, everyone at some point in time has driven Buzz. Just not everyone has been caught doing it. Multiple DUIs is where I would draw the line, but not one bad decision. I probably would disagree with that. If someone got a DUI, that's a bad decision. I have driven Buzz before, but I was young and stupid. And I mean real young, like maybe too young to even drink. That was a bad mistake. I have not in my adult lifetime, especially in my mature adult lifetime, after being married and having children, ever done anything like that. That's extremely bad decision making, and there's a high likelihood that something bad is going to happen. A lot more so. We'll just take it for example. I drive home where I live at night. There's about 50 deers waiting in the edge of the woods to just jump out of my car. They did it a few months ago, bashed in my truck. 6 a.m. Actually, it was 6 a.m. Same difference. It was night, and you can't account for that. He just jumps out and sacrifices his life to destroy my truck. A person who's drunk or buzzed has really slow reaction time. And again, I say that because I used to drink quite a bit when I was younger. I haven't drank anything since I was in my 20s. To me, drinking is a waste of time. I would hate to think that I could only feel good if I was drinking. It'd be like a drug. Someone takes a drug so they can feel better. And I really don't get the idea of drinking like one or two. I don't fault people who drink a few beers. I don't think anything is wrong with that. I don't think there's any moral wrong to drinking a couple beers. I mean, drinking wine's in the Bible. Paul's telling people in the Bible to drink wine to help their stomach. So obviously if you're drinking wine that has alcohol in it, but having some self-control is the important thing. Again, I have people in my family who drink all the time. They don't bother me. I just don't drink anymore. It was a choice that I made, and I think it serves me well and probably rules out having issues in that area altogether. But this was a funny question. They went back and forth for a while. It's funny because they were way overthinking this stuff. I figured it'd be kind of a cut and dry thing, and I think most people who voted, it's 84% no, got the original premise of it. But I just got a real kick out of them guys just fighting each other back and forth. Just, blah, blah, blah. I love the internet for that. You go in there and you see this stuff. A lot of times I'll get some negative comments. I don't know why. I don't know. I guess I just draw in negative comments, which is fine because they're entertaining. A lot of them are entertaining. A lot of them they kind of revolve around me not knowing what I'm doing in whatever video it is, which is fine because I don't care. All right, let's take a break. I'll see you guys after the break. Yellow Jacket is rapidly expanding their wireless probe lineup. It includes the 67068 YJack dual port manometer. These communicate with your smart device. You can get the 67074 YJack wireless charging and evacuation kit. Everything you need for charging and a micron gauge with a display, an added feature. You can also get other wireless probes like the 67067 amp clamp, wireless electrical readings as well. This is great. And the 67063 YJack Do wireless psychrometer probe. Everything you need to get every single reading you want. YJack probes are compatible with MeasureQuick as well, and you can find all these probes at TrueTech Tools. And make sure when you go to TrueTechTools.com, use the Shop Talk discount code to save 8%. If you run a home service business like painting, contracting, lawn care, or cleaning, your to-do list is endless. From hiring staff to mountains of paperwork, not to mention doing the actual work that pays the bills.
Jobber is a mobile and online app that helps you organize your business and look professional. With Jobber, you can quote jobs, schedule your crew, invoice, and get paid all in one place. Try it free today at getjobber.com/shop talk.
So last time we had a podcast, I was talking about the refrigeration cycle, and we kind of left off exiting the evaporator. Well, we bypassed one thing, and I didn't really think about it, but I should mention it, is when the refrigerant leaves the condenser coil as a subcooled liquid heading to the expansion device, it does pass through a service valve typically on the condensing unit. So I will mention that. Now, service valve is really simple. It's a point at which you can measure the refrigerant pressure, and you can shut down the refrigerant circuit so you can perform a pump down, or for any number of reasons, you can shut down the refrigerant circuit. There's different type of service valves, but typically most of them are exactly the same. There's a little service port where you hook up your gauges. It has a Schrader valve in it. The second most common one that I saw personally was the valve that like a carrier had, where to get any pressure into the actual gauges, you had to crack the service valve. So it would be open, letting refrigerant pass, but you'd crank back down on it a little bit, just sort of like you were closing it again, and you just slightly turn it and it would allow pressure into the gauges as well. So it was a little different way to do it. And if you didn't take that into account, sometimes you would be forgetful and forget what you had to do, be like, why isn't this working properly? But I did want to mention that. It is the source of a lot of slow leaks that require attention sometimes. A lot of times it'll leak up through the cap area. I used to put Nylog on those. People put leak lock on them. It may not stop it altogether, but it will slow it down typically. And a lot of these leaks are so slow that you don't necessarily have to change out the valve. And you may not even have to put refrigerant in it, but once every few years. Now, that's a judgment call. If you're one of the people like, if anything leaks, you have to change it. I mean, you can change it, but I operate in the real world. And if it lasts 2 or 3 years, and no one's going to change it because it's not cost effective to change that valve. That's just what I'm thinking. But people may disagree with me. It seems like, according to the internet, they often do. So I'll put that out there. So we're leaving the evaporator coil. Our refrigerant is now a cool gas. It is warmed up to the point which it has become a gas because it entered the coil as a liquid gas mixture after it passed through the metering device. So you had your metering device, which is this engineered restriction in the line we talked about last time, causes the pressure to drop. The refrigerant expands. It's a saturated vapor. It starts to boil off. And as it boils off, it gets completely boiled off into a gas, and then starts to take on more heat. And every degree of heat it takes on above that point at which it boiled off, that's superheat. So we have this superheated gas leaving the evaporator coil, and it's heading down the line set called the suction line in this case. We're talking about AC units, not heat pumps. It would be the same running an AC cycle for a heat pump. But I just want to be real plain with this. We're talking about the air conditioning cycle. We're heading back toward the compressor. Now, if it is a heat pump, you're going to have an accumulator typically. You're going to be passing through another service valve. The suction service valve is what I call it. So if you have a suction line coming back from the evaporator to the condenser, it's first going to hit the condenser at that service valve. Just like we talked about the other service valve, this is just an access point for testing, for charging and commissioning the unit, an access point for pulling the vacuum, and a way to shut the system down for service or pump down, etc. So it passes through that service valve. It's going to pass through an accumulator on some systems, but not all systems. And that is right before the compressor. Also on a heat pump, it's going to pass through the reversing valve. Reversing valve it's a little complicated to describe on a podcast, but it's also called a four-way valve. I think we talked about it a little bit last time, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not positive. It might have been a couple podcasts ago we talked about reversing valves. But basically, in the air conditioning cycle on a heat pump, you have a valve that swings back and forth, basically putting the system into heating or cooling, depending on what kind of low voltage signal you have to the unit. And in cooling, you're going to have that gas go through the service valve. This can go into the reversing valve and be directed toward the compressor, typically through an accumulator, then into the compressor. So an accumulator, all that is a device that allows all the refrigerant that has not boiled off to boil off. So in some cases, if an evaporator coil is flooded, it doesn't get that refrigerant boiled off, or there's a low temperature operation in AC or in heating, sometimes not all that refrigerant will boil off. So it goes into the accumulator, and basically picture the accumulator as a big garbage can. It's a cylinder or a coffee can, except it's all enclosed and it has two pipes going into it. One going to the compressor and one coming in from that service valve, reversing valve. So when the refrigerant goes in, it heads down a tube, but the tube out is not connected. So to get into that tube, basically you have to boil off the refrigerant. It allows any liquid to settle at the bottom of the accumulator. It boils off, then heads out the top as a boiled off gas. That is the design of it. It's designed so there's no liquid going back to the compressor, because liquid going back to the compressor will wash out the oil from the bearings on the compressor. It'll wash out the lubrication, and it'll cause the compressor to want to die. And you don't want that compressor to die, because your customer will be like, why'd it die? And then you'll be in a position where you have to lie, and you don't want to do that. You wouldn't lie, would you? So these components are important. On a heat pump, I don't know that I've seen any on AC condensers. Some of them are in refrigeration, but I'm sure there may be a condenser out there with an accumulator on it, but typically I only see those on heat pumps. So when you look inside a condenser for an AC only, it's going to look pretty bare inside, because it's going to be missing an accumulator. It's going to be missing a four-way valve or reversing valve. When you look inside a heat pump, it looks like there's a whole mess of crap down there. It could be really, really intimidating. One way to take the intimidation out of it, my suggestion is just trace where the refrigerant goes. Spend a second looking inside the unit. You can look at one of the schematics if they have one in the instruction manual. But just look at the unit, find the compressor, find that little tube. Almost all the compressors you're going to see nowadays are scrolls. There's some different compressors on the high end of the market, but there's not a whole lot of reciprocating compressors. At least I don't think there is. I'm sure there's some every so often you might see a reciprocating compressor. But for residential, you're going to see a lot of scroll compressors. Scroll compressors almost always look the exact same. High-end compressors are going to have some other components on them, but a basic scroll compressor is going to have a little tube coming out the top. That's your hot gas discharge, and a larger tube about midway down the compressor, and that's your suction gas. You can trace it out, trace it going into the condenser coil, or in the case of a heat pump, into the reversing valve, and then into the condenser coil. And you can sort of lay out how the system's going to work. Don't be afraid to take a few minutes and kind of lay it out one day, or at your house. Typically, everyone out there has an AC, so you can go outside and take a look at your AC condensing unit. Study the manual. The manuals have a lot of information. Not all of them have diagrams. I'm kind of a visual learner. I like to see stuff and analyze it when I see it. I can't read a paragraph and say, all right, well, I understand how this works. And for a lot of you, maybe you can't listen to a podcast and do that either. But what I'm hoping is you can listen to what I'm saying, and then you could see it in your real life, maybe tomorrow, and say, okay, I get what he's saying now. I see what he means. That's the idea. That's what I'm hoping this conversation will do for you. And you can send me an email. My email's in the description of all these podcasts. If you want to talk about something specific, we can. I'm going to touch on some more components as we go by. We'll tell some more great stories. And I just want to kind of wrap up this little segment here about the refrigeration cycle, kind of lay some very basic groundwork so we can all maybe have a better understanding of what's going on in that AC you're working on. Hey, you man or woman or non-binary person out there listening to this podcast, why don't you take a moment and help me out for a second? You're already in the Porta-John probably, and you have a couple minutes. So go over to the podcast page on like Apple Podcasts or whatever app you're using and leave this podcast a review. Leave it a 5-star review, say something nice. Leave it a 1-star review and say something scathingly awful. I look forward to reading them. I think it's going to be great. And if some of you will actually do that, I'll read some on the podcast. So you can say, hey, I wrote that awful stuff. And then your wife will be like, why did you write that? And you'll be like, he told us to write that. And she'll be like, there's no way he said that. But you know what? Go ahead and do it. It'll be fun. So let's go over to YouTube. We'll catch a few comments here, questions, see if we can't answer them and do it in a way that it's correct. Here's for hoping, guys. Raise your glass. First question is on a video I made called Installing Zoning on My HVAC System. This is EWC Controls. Dumb question, but what does the supply air sensor do? Well, in this case, the supply air sensor just measures the temperature in between the evaporator coil and the heat strips. So it doesn't measure the temperature in the supply duct. It measures the temperature midway through the air handler. This is at my house. And this tells the board what temperature the air is coming out the evaporator coil. This is important because if it's too cold, it'll shut down the system. Or in the heating cycle, if it's too hot, it'll shut down the system. It allows you to set some parameters for the high and low point and make sure you protect your compressor on both ends. So it's just a safety, and it's good data to have for the board so it can make the right decision. The controls I used in the past, the EcoJ controls, it would also, and I don't remember if the EWC does this or not, but it will measure the temperature and heating cycle, and it will tell the heat strips to come on if the supply air temperature is not above a certain point after X amount of time. For example, if the supply air temperature on a heat pump, and you gas furnace people are like going to think this is nuts, but the supply air temperature, let's say it's 85 on a heat pump. It's possible. That feels like cold air coming out sometimes in the wintertime. 85 degrees, then the board will say, hey, that's not warm enough, obviously. Let's turn on the first stage of heat strips or the whole heat strip if it's a smaller one. And therefore, you'll get that extra boost of heat that you need for your house. So that's the point of the switch. It serves a few purposes, but that's not a dumb question at all. That was a good question. The next one is more of a statement. This is why the Bosch IDS units will never control humidity. And the comment is, you can't, I think he meant you can't. It says you can, but I'm sure it means you can't. You can't call it a true inverter unless the outdoor unit is communicating with the blower. Now, I know a communicating system, we refer to a system that sends like a data signal in between the different components. Now, the Bosch doesn't do that like a communicating system does, but I do believe the Bosch, you can still call it a true inverter based on how the outdoor unit operates and the components in the outdoor unit. Now, if I'm mistaken, somebody can they can tell me, but I think it's a more atypical compared to those communicating systems. The Bosch is sort of on its own. It's like a unique design. Now, I think there's a couple like it now, but it's kind of a unique design where you could have an inverter but still have a simple 24-volt setup. So there you go. Hopefully that is correct. I'm pretty sure that's correct. And pretty sure is about as good as it gets from me. Our next comment is on I just made like a sponsor thing, like a Yellow Jacket ad on YouTube that says they're now available at TrueTechTools.com. I didn't know that. I went to TrueTech Tools and it had a section for Yellow Jacket. I'm like, what is happening? Yellow Jacket didn't even tell me. Now, that might be a bad sign right there. When your sponsor's not giving you the latest information, that could be a bad sign. But they are at TrueTech Tools, and you can use, like the ad says on this show here at some point, the Shop Talk code that we have. You can save 8% at TrueTech Tools, and now you can do that on Yellow Jacket as well, since they're there. And it says Measure Quick approved now too. So Measure Quick works with Yellow Jacket. So Yellow Jacket, they're already good, and now they're real good. So there you go. Something nice from Yellow Jacket. So on the podcast I released a little while back called HVAC Customer Service, Throw a Pullout in a River. That part was supposed to be funny. This is on the YouTube version. In the comments, Sam says, Zack, I never heard your sales talent before. I mean that. I'm surprised you would rate yourself as no good at it. Maybe I should amend that statement. Let's say that I could probably do it. I just don't like it. And maybe that's what I meant. Now, typically, I'm not a social person. I've said it in the past. If I could just work in my shop all day, I'm pretty much ecstatic. Life is good. But I am capable of socializing. So I can be social. I know how to be social. I just don't prefer socializing. And that's against no person in general. It's just how I roll. So I'll amend the original statement. I could probably be a good salesman. I just don't like sales. So, but thank you, Sam, for the comment. Okay, boys and girls, I appreciate you listening to the show, and I hope you listen to every single show. There's like 500 and some of them. Listen to all of them. I'm pretty sure that'll help me out in some way, shape, or form. Share, like, subscribe. I don't know, all that crap. The one I like is you can't like the video. That's good. If you're on YouTube doing this, that's helpful. Even if you comment, that's good too. Comments and likes help on YouTube. That's great. If you're listening to it as a podcast, doing the review, I think, is the biggest thing you can do if you enjoy the show. If you don't enjoy the show, I mean, your work is done. You don't have to do any of that stuff. Or you can leave a bad review. That's entertaining. I don't mind if you leave a bad review. I think all of you should go leave bad reviews right now. And I will see you guys on the next one. And God bless all of you bad reviewers.
If a unit goes buzz, it's the run cap. If a unit goes buzz, it's the run cap. If a unit goes buzz, buzzy, buzzy, buzz, it's the Chinese run cap. If a unit pumps down, it's the TXV. If a unit pumps down, it's the TXV. It pumps down, down to the ground. It's the daggone TXV. If a unit freezes up, it's a good man. If a unit freezes up, it's a good man. They say all brands do it, but man, screw it. It's my song, so it's a good man. Words of wisdom from a super tech. I will teach you about my red flags and measure quick. So teachers teach about superheat, but do they teach you at which Arby's to eat? I do. If the fan won't move, it's the bearing. If the fan won't move, it's the bearing. It may be sleeve or it may be ball, but it's daggone, it's sure the bearing. If the suction line's hot, just add gas. If the suction line's hot, just add gas. The superheat's high, high as the sky, so you better add gas. If the compressor breaker is tripped, then it's grounded. If the compressor breaker's tripped, that old sucker's grounded, so don't hold that breaker closed. From experience. Words of wisdom from a super tech. I can teach you about my red flags and measure quick. Teachers teach about superheat, but none of them know the best Arby's to eat at. But I do. And that's why you listen to me,
because I do.